Hello and welcome back to revise GCSE History.co.uk, the number one place for your GCSE history revision. This is video 1 in the topic The Homesteaders, the first video in that topic, and in this video today we're going to be looking at the reasons for settling on the plains and who the homesteaders were. So, who were the homesteaders? In the second half of the 19th century, thousands of people in America sold their homes, left their friends and families, and travelled, in some cases, thousands of miles to settle on the Great Plains. These people lived on and farmed the Great Plains, and they were called homesteaders. This picture up here shows the Great Plains. And if you think back to the work in the topic of the Plains Indians, we said that white Americans thought of the Great Plains as a useless desert. They called it the Great American Desert. So, from sort of the 1830s to the 1860s, their opinion of this changed, as when the Plains Indians were freely roaming the plains, the white Americans thought it's quite a useless desert. They didn't see its farming potential. They thought because of the scarcity of water and building materials that it was impossible to live and farm there. But their opinion soon changed. Okay, so why did these people come to live on the Great Plains in the second half of the 19th century? And that is 1850 onwards, really. So, there were 3 government acts that gave settlers land for free or sold it to them very cheaply. And let's have a look at these 3 government acts. For the exam, you do need to be aware of these 3 government acts and the details about them. At first, it may seem like there's a lot to take in here and a lot of specific detail to learn, but once you go over it once or twice, you should have no problem in recalling the specific details of these 3 government acts. So the Homestead Act of 1862, this gave families 160 acres of land for free, and the one condition is that they had to live on it and farm it for 5 years. The second act was the Timber Culture Act of 1873, and this gave settlers who already had land on the Great Plains a further 160 acres of land free of charge. And the condition with this act, with the 160 acres of additional land for free, is that they had to plant 40 acres of their land with trees. 40 acres had to be planted with trees. Finally, the third act was the Desert Land Act of 1877, and settlers who wanted more land could buy this land cheaply. They could buy 640 acres of additional land cheaply if they wanted to. So for this one, the land wasn't free, but it was still cheap to buy. And this land with the Desert Land Act was sold in areas where lack of rainfall was a problem. So, the government encouraged many people to live and farm on the Great Plains by offering them land for free or offering them land very cheaply. So these 2 acts here, these 2, give it free, and that one, the Desert Land Act, gives it cheaply. So the government encouraged people to live and farm on the plains. So, what other factors explain why so many people became homesteaders during the second half of the 19th century? Well, the end of the Civil War was also another factor. The US Civil War began in 1861 and it ended in 1865. After the war, thousands of demobilised soldiers and their families wanted to rebuild their lives, so they wanted a new start. Becoming homesteaders and living on the Great Plains gave them an opportunity to make a new start in life. Freed black slaves after the US Civil War were also looking for a new start in life after living as slaves for many years. And many ex-slaves and ex-soldiers became homesteaders, cowboys and railroad builders in the West. Building of the railroads is also another factor which explains why so many people became homesteaders, and for 2 main reasons really. So, The railroads meant that it was easy for the homesteaders to get onto the plains, so it was easy. Now the railroads have been built, and also land could be bought cheaply from, bought cheaply from railroad companies. So the railroad companies bought the land either side of a railroad when they built the railroad, and they didn't really need this land, so what they did, the railroad companies, is they sold land either side of the railroad very cheaply to the homesteaders. And just as I'm talking through it now, I can think of another reason, a third reason, why the railroads encourage people to become homesteaders, and that's because of advertising. So the railroad companies did lots of advertising, which encouraged people to go west. So, what factors encourage people to become homesteaders? We can break these factors down into push factors, pull factors, and enabling factors. Push factors are things making people want to leave their current homes, things pushing them away from where they currently live. Pull factors are things that are attracting them towards the Great Plains, things that are pulling them towards the west, things that are desirable. And then enabling factors are things that are making this possible and achievable, things that make this a reality. So, let's have a look. Push factors. Well, many people wanted to escape from poverty and unemployment. There was also a lack of farming land back home. Religious persecution was also why many people wanted to leave their homes. Ex-soldiers from the US Civil War also saw lack of opportunity when they returned home. Free slaves also wanted to live somewhere else because of religious persecution, then social persecution. I'm going to add and social persecution that even existed after the US Civil War. So the push factors. Pull factors, things that are particularly attractive and people like about living on the Great Plains. Well, they were offered free or cheap land, and that attracted many people. Chance of a new start, chance of an adventure attracted many. Advertising done by the railroad companies. The idea of manifest destiny, we've looked at this before. If this idea is unfamiliar to you, go back, and I think it's in the early settlers video called The Journey West. Look at that. So manifest destiny is the belief that it's the Christian Americans' God-given right to civilize and settle the whole of the North American continent, and that anyone who stops them from doing this is a traitor of the USA and the traitor of God too. And also, many who had already settled sent letters home, and this encouraged people to live on the plains and start farming there for themselves. So, enabling factors. What factors made the movement onto the Great Plains a reality? What made it possible? Well, later on, homesteaders could travel by railroad. That made it easier to get onto the plains. And the Plains Indians that once roamed freely on the plains, by the 1860s, they were cleared from these lands. They were no longer just roaming around the plains as they liked, and they were confined by the US Army and the government to the reservations. Don't worry too much about what the reservations are for the purpose of this video. All you need to be aware of in this context is that the Indians weren't living on these lands anymore and they'd been cleared. We'll look at the reservations a bit more in a later video. Okay, so we've actually covered all the knowledge we need to go over for this video today. So here are 4 just basic questions based on all the knowledge we've talked through in today's video. Pause the video here if you like, scribble down some answers to these questions. If not, carry on watching if you're not 100% and we'll do the answers together. So question 1, how did government acts explain why people became homesteaders? Gave them free or cheap land. That was attractive to many people. Question 2, state 2 ways that the building of the railroad explained why so many people became homesteaders. 2 ways, well, it was easier to get onto the plains when the railroads have been built, and also land was sold cheaply by the railroad companies. Question 3, give 2 pull factors that explain why people became homesteaders. two pull factors. Many want to escape from poverty and unemployment, so I'll just put poverty for this one. Another pull factor is religious persecution. There are just two that I can think of at the moment. Check back this slide here to see if your answers that you jotted down were valid. I'm sure they were. And question 4, finally, give two pull factors that explain why many people became homesteaders. Pull factors: chance of a new start. I can think of that one. And secondly, offer. Hopefully this will just squeeze on at the bottom of the video. Offer of free land was attractive to many too. Alright, so there are the answers. Oh, sorry, just to say, you could have had any of the pull factors from this slide there, not just the two that I've jotted down. Okay, there are the answers to the 4 little basic quiz questions for this video today. I do hope that you found this video useful, and if you have, head over to the website revisegcsehistory.co.uk, where you can view more videos similar to this one for your GCSE history course. Good luck with your studies, and I hope to see you again very soon.